Whose stock has gone up and who's gone down after the first week of training camp? All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, and if you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe on YouTube as well, or both. Both is good. Today, we're going to be kind of doing a nice check-in and stock up, stock down. If you've been a long-time listener of Locked On Sharks, or basically any sports podcast, stock up, stock down is a very popular, fun game to play, where we're just going to kind of check in on guys whose stock has been rising and guys whose stock has been falling. And we're going to start with the forwards, and then the second segment we'll do the blue liners, and then we'll talk about the goalie battles that have kind of happened and kind of who's just early claims right now. So we'll start positive. And I think I want to start with Tomas Hertl, who's been kind of, maybe at least on this podcast, has been not talked about too much because there's just so much different things to talk about, right? With all the young forwards, where's Eklund going to play, when, et cetera, et cetera. But Tomas Hertl, you have to say stock up to begin with. And I know he's played one game, he had a goal in that game, but from all accounts from practice and what we saw in the game, Hertl looks like he's coming into camp, or it came into camp in excellent shape, right? I know Hertl last year had a what is considered a down season for Tomas Hertl last year, and it wasn't as bad as I think we made it out to be. So again, Hertl last year ended with 63 points in 79 games played. He had 22 goals, 41 assists. The year before, which we all thought was a great season from Hertl, he had 64 points in 82 games. So you could actually say his point production was better. It's just he hit the 30-goal plateau and had 34 assists. Well, last year he was kind of more of a setup man for Timo Meier, and he admitted he passed up on some shots to try to feed Timo Meier the puck. I think this year we're going to have Hertl, who's best shape of his life, Tomas Hertl, who's going to come in, and I think he's going to be more active in shooting the puck and being one of those guys. We've seen it, right, this season, and at least so far in training camp and preseason, it looks like Hertl has kind of refound the Hertl form that we all expect him to be. And as it is, he is the unquestioned 1C on this team. I think we've talked about all summer where the better depth in the forward group, again, the talent in not having Timo Meier isn't as great, but between your Mike Hoffmans, your Zadinas, your Duclairs, Barabanovs, Eklunds, like Granlunds, whoever you want to throw, Peterson, whoever you want to throw out there, there's better depth. And I think this team is more well suited, at least in the forward department, where if Zadina gets nicked up for a few games, or Couture is out for a few games, or, whoever is, if guys are kind of in and out of the lineup, I think they're better suited to kind of deal with those issues. And I think Hertl, I don't expect Hertl to play every game. Again, he missed 3 games last year, 2 due to suspension, 1 to the birth of his child, and then he played every game the year before. We can hopefully, fingers crossed, Hertl continues to show this healthy streak that he's had the last couple seasons, even going back to the 2021 season. He played 50 of the 56 games, but I believe, if I recall correctly, some of those were COVID concerns why he missed some of those games. So I'm not going to that weird season. I'm not holding that pro or con against anybody, at least especially when it comes to injuries and missing games. But Hertl has been healthier the last couple seasons, and the hope for him is being in better shape here, better surrounding talent around, depth around him should continue with that. So stock down, Thomas Bordeleau. And again, I don't know with Bordeleau. It's a little worrisome that we haven't seen him contribute the same way that we saw at the beginning of the season last year with the Barracuda. And I know making the jump from the NA, you're even going back to his small sample size 8 games with the Sharks when he first signed. And I know it's training camp, preseason. You're not playing with the same guys. And this is a big opportunity for Bordeleau, right? Especially with Logan Couture being out with an injury. He's expected week to week. We'll see if Couture is ready. He's supposed to get back on the ice some point next week and kind of maybe start ramping up here as he gets ready for the beginning of the season. Again, we'll see with Couture. I think the Sharks want to be smart with him and don't rush him back for no reason, especially at the beginning of a very, very long season. But Bordeleau, you were hoping he would this would be the season, kind of take that next step. And especially if you're playing with Barabanov, Duclair, like those are two good, very good NHL players, right? Duclair is a former 30-goal scorer. Barabanov, we've seen grow in front of our eyes and become a very good NHL player who's going to demand a fairly large contract, and we're going to do a Barabanov contract here before the end of training camp contract episode. But these are very good players, right? That you're playing with, and we haven't really seen Bordeleau make the impact. And I know even on Wednesday's game where he was playing with kind of more of a Barracuda team, but you would expect him to perform well, especially with kind of the chemistry he has with these guys. And it just we haven't seen Bordeleau kind of take that step I think a lot of us were hoping for. And again, it's early in preseason. And I fully expect at this point, as soon as Couture is healthy in the lineup, Bordeleau will be in with the Barracuda. But you were hoping he would kind of hit the ground running. And I know he had a pretty solid rookie camp, especially that one game where he had 2 goals and a great assist. But again, like Bordeleau at this point has played a fair amount of NHL games against, and that game against Vegas, I believe it was the Vegas game. We know Vegas's prospect pool just isn't anywhere near the Sharks prospect pool because they've been utilizing their assets to try to win cups, and they've done that successfully because they won the cup. So yes, the Sharks prospects should look much better than the Vegas prospects because they are better. But you're hoping for Bordeleau to kind of take that step and be the guy that we all expected him to be, especially after watching him in Michigan and, watching kind of especially the first half of last year when he was named to the AHL All-Star game as the Barracuda representative. So it's just a little worrisome that it feels like he might have plateaued, and we know development is different for everybody, and some guys plateau for a little bit before they make a step, or some guys just never kind of make the step that you hope. So, yes, stock down right now on Thomas Bordeleau. Again, we'll see maybe once we start getting more preseason games, or maybe we start seeing some more of the NHL team, we can maybe see Bordeleau kind of his stock start to rise here a little bit. So, quick, just mini ones. I think Zadina, despite the injury, I think stock is up for him. He's looking pretty solid. If we'll see what happened with the injury, especially playing on the Hertl line. I think that's the Hoffman Hertl Zadina line. We'll see if Zadina is out for any extended period of time, what they do there. Fingers crossed it's Eklund who maybe kind of slides in up there, but we'll see with that. And then, I think for the most part, a lot of the forwards, you kind of feel good. Maybe some of these guys who are like some of the AHL guys, like a Nathan Todd, his stock is up. I think Ryan Carpenter, he could be a legitimate, if Bordeleau doesn't win the job outside and if David Quinn doesn't feel like Bordeleau is ready for the NHL at the start of the season and Couture's still hurt, I think Carpenter is going to be your 4C, and you just put Granlund at 2C, Sturm at 3C, and Carpenter at 4C until Couture gets back, because you know exactly what you're getting out of Carpenter. And I think Carpenter's looked pretty solid so far in the preseason. So some of these AHL guys, your veterans, you're going to feel really good about what they can contribute with this Barracuda team. So that's it for the forwards. We'll get to the defensemen here in a second. But before we do that, do need to take a quick break. and talk to you about our good friends over at DoorDash. And if you're like me, you love the convenience of getting what you want right to your door with DoorDash grocery delivery. You can stock up for the week or order that last minute craving conveniently. Nothing worse than trying to get ready to start cooking dinner, and then you realize you don't have that one thing, and you've already unpacked the kid, especially like me, right? You've already unpacked the kids. They're doing their homework. It's too much of a hassle to just pack them all up to go to the store to get one thing. DoorDash totally comes in the clutch there. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or they'll make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked it yourselves. And if you want more value, you can save all of your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. So get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 value when you use the code LOCKED at checkout. Limited time offer, terms do apply. That's 50% off up to $20 minimum subtotal and $0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKED. Don't forget, that's code LOCKED for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. All right, moving back to the blue line. I think we know two guys. I'm just going to kind of lump them together it's Shakir Mukhamadullin and Henry Thrun. Both these guys looking like future foundational pieces for the Sharks core. Thrun, we'll start with Henry Thrun, who I think is more likely to start the season with the Sharks than Mukhamadullin. Henry Thrun, I wrote about it on Inside the Rink. He looks like a player who is going to be a 1,000-game NHL defenseman for a team or in the NHL. He just looks like one of those guys where everything kind of comes naturally. He looks smooth. Shang wrote about Henry Thrun today and how he wanted, working on his stick positioning, spending the summer doing that. And you can see that stuff's paying off. We know David Quinn absolutely loves him some Henry Thrun. And I at this point, I think it's going to be hard pressed to not have Thrun on the team, especially with the lack of offensive options. And there's really not anybody who can run the power play right now. And Thrun's been getting an option. He's been getting the opportunity, right? Every time he is a defenseman in the game, he has been the power play one quarterback for the team, and he's done a pretty solid job with it. The power play last night looked super dangerous. I know they only scored one there, but he's doing exactly what you need to do, even if it's just making kind of the smart plays, getting it to the open guys and keeping the puck moving. And I think that's going to bode well for him as he continues to gain confidence and gain just experience, right? I will probably early next week. We'll probably do maybe a first look at potential roster where we have things at some point here soon. So we'll probably do that. It's going to be hard for me to not put Henry Thrun on this team again, even with Burrows and Shimmicks and everybody else on this team right now. It's going to be hard to not, just because I think he offers something that the other defensemen just do not offer right now. So, and then Shakir Mukhamadullin, who is looking like he's on his way to being a great player for the Sharks. And Quinn did say he's most likely he's going to start the season AHL, right? We know that that's going to happen. It's the best thing for him, right? He's played, 20 games over in North America. I mean, counting preseason games and, his AHL games, he's played 20 games in the AHL and the NHL or North America. It's going to take some time, but you see the pieces are there. And I love him partnering with Vlasic, especially because how much he can learn from Vlasic, right? We know with Mukhamadullin, it's all about, he has all the tools in the world. He's got the size, he's got, all the physical tools. he needs to work on kind of the mental side of the game. What better player to learn from than Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who's built an entire career on just being smarter and knowing exactly where to be. Not saying Vlasic is some, schlub as an athlete, but, when you think of Vlasic, you think about the tactician part of it. And if any part of that can rub onto Mukhamadullin, like it's going to do so much for him to kind of see his game flourish. So you got to be feeling, especially compared to where this Sharks blue line was, 18 months ago, you got to be feeling really good about the direction it's heading. Stock down defensively is a little tough. Radim Simek, of course, getting injured, and that's been the story of Shimek's career, right? Has been that availability, right? And I know last year he missed, 2 big chunks of time due to concussion. He's dealt with some other injuries, and it doesn't seem like as long term as we expected. I think Quinn said maybe a little bit longer than day today, so whatever that is. So I would say, I guess, maybe a week or two. We should know some more here by the end of the week, or even by the time you're listening to this with Simek. But it's going to be, I know the contract, I know Simek is kind of a beloved player, but he's just getting passed over, right? I mean, would you rather play Henry Thrun or Radim Simek right now? I'd rather play Henry Thrun. Even, Nikita Okhotyuk, who's kind of the Simek mold of a rough and tumble defenseman. Okhotyuk, he looked okay the other night, but he's much younger and he's going to be potentially part of the Sharks' future. Even guys like Burrows, who we've seen already, more than willing to kind of get chippy with it. I just think there's other options, much cheaper options than Radim Simek, and I feel bad because I don't know what you do with Radim Simek at this point. And, maybe he goes down and plays in the AHL. It can help those guys to develop. But again, that's still taking away ice time from younger players who needs that ice time, right? Whether it's, if Galen Larocque makes the Barracuda or Shakir Mukhamadullin or whomever's down there, that's taking ice time away from your future guys. So, and you can't trade Radim Simek. You're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with Simek right now. So, but the other defenseman, I'm going to kind of put this all together, but stock down on the transition game, right? We saw it especially on Tuesday night's game of just how rough it was for the Sharks to kind of get the transition going. And again, I know it's preseason and you try not to read into it, but those type of signs are, those are symptoms of potentially bigger issues for the Sharks of not being able to start clean transitions, and every puck is basically up and out, up off the glass and out. And that's fine occasionally, but when you're doing that every time, that makes your forwards have to work so much harder to just fight for the puck. And all the 50-50 pucks, well, they're 50-50 pucks because half the time you don't win them, right? A clean transition starts your offense. If you're kind of having to, like the football saying, right? 3 clouds and 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You're basically having to do that just to get into the neutral zone, and then this get into the offensive zone is exhausting, and it's hard to have sustained offense that way. And I worry, especially if with Mukhamadullin, who I think can start the transition. Thrun, I think, can get there eventually as he continues to play more. But like Vlasic, Ferraro, like all the Benning, Burrows, all these guys, their games are kind of the simple pass to get out. And yes, that'll work, but sometimes you need special players to do special things to make special offense. And I'm worried that the Sharks, especially with Erik Karlsson, that's going to be an issue throughout the season of just getting the puck cleanly out of their zone to start offense. So before we continue and we look early goalie battles, and whose stock I think is kind of up and whose stock is a little bit down, do want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. We will be back next week. We'll of course cover the preseason game from the weekend. Like I said, we'll probably do a kind of early lines, who makes the team, who doesn't. Maybe even look at some potential Barracuda lines, which would be fun as well. So we're going to probably do that at some point early next week. We'll do another stock up, stock down at the end of the week as well. Again, as we, get ready for the regular season. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can subscribe on YouTube as well. All right, the goalies, and we'll continue our positive start. Kaapo Kahknonen. We've seen Kaapo Kahknonen have good stretches of play, especially after the Sharks acquired him. And last year was a season to forget for Kaapo Kahknonen. I think he'll be the first to admit that. I think us watching it would like to forget what we saw last season, but looked solid against Vegas. And again, if Kaapo Kahknonen can kind of refined his game, that would be huge for the Sharks, at least going forward, right? It's not like Kaapo Kahknonen is some like he's not like his James Reimer, who's already on the back half of his career. Kaapo Kahknonen just turned 27, and we know sometimes goalies do take a little bit longer to kind of get things going here. But I thought Kaapo Kahknonen looked pretty good in that game against Vegas. He looked, just looked controlled and calmed. And that's what you need from him, and making those kind of big saves. And again, it wasn't like super tested against Vegas. That was not a NHL caliber team, but it could be one of those nice building block moments for Kaapo, just baby steps to kind of rebuild that confidence and get him back to where Sharks and Sharks fans need him to be, right? As a potential long-term decision or long-term piece for the Sharks, especially going into a contract year. The Sharks are going to have to decide what they want to do with him this offseason. Do you trade him at the trade deadline if he's turned into anything? Do you let him walk in free agency? Do you resign him? Do you resign him to like a one-year deal? Whatever you want to try to. Plenty of time to discuss Kaapo Kahknen's future, but at least a good first start, right? On the flip side, Mackenzie Blackwood, not the greatest first impression, right? Especially, the first 10 minutes of the game on Tuesday night against the Ducks, where not, again, Olen Zellweger is going to be a great player, but that is a goal Mackenzie Blackwood needs to stop. And give him credit, though. Settled down after that, was lights out of the rest of the game. Didn't allow a goal. The only goal they had was at the end on an empty netter. But still, giving up 3 goals in the first 10 minutes of the game or whatever it was. Tough debut. Tough debut for Mackenzie Blackwood. So I still expect Blackwood to be the opening night starter. Just because, again, my Greer brought him in. Kaapo Kahknonen was part of the previous regime, the Joe Will, who's still there. But anyway, right? Mackenzie Blackwood, Mike Greer, known him from previous, his previous stops, has worked with him. I expect him to be I expect Mackenzie Blackwood to be the starter. And it was one game. Ducks just came out and were the better team that night. We shall see, though, if Blackwood can he says he's healthy. He says he's ready to go. Big year for Mackenzie Blackwood as he tries to kind of reestablish himself in the NHL. So, and then another player who's looking to establish himself, Georgi Romanov. And again, not the greatest start, right? And a game where on Wednesday night where your team was by far the better team, right? Go listen to the episode yesterday where you could just how dominant the Sharks were, especially when it came to shots, shot attempts, high quality shot, whatever metric you wanted to look at. The Sharks were the better team against the Ducks, despite having less of an NHL roster, right? It was more of a Barracuda roster, with the exception of a few players, especially in the forward department, right? It was Zadina was really kind of the only established NHL player, and even Zadina, we know what's up with Zadina, but there was some soft goals that I know Romanov definitely wants back, and we'll see what Magnus Krona does this weekend. I think he's expected to get the start on Saturday. And then we'll probably, with the last 2 preseason games, see more of Blackwood and Kaapo Kahknonen. But right now, even just because Corona hasn't done anything, you have to say he's leading that early battle to be the Barracuda backup. We still don't know E2 Makanemi's status when the season starts, but expect, I think, Corona to get the bulk of the starts, or a good chunk of starts at the beginning of the season for the Barracuda. He could also have a tire fire start on Saturday night, and then we could be back at square one and talking about how all the goalies look bad. So except for Kaapo Kahknonen. So let's hope Kaapo Kahknonen can kind of refine his form. So that's going to be it for me. Stock up on the weekend. It's here. Stock down on another work week. Their work weeks are dumb. All weekends, all the time. But no, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks, of course, your first listen. Proudly a part of the Locked On Network. Again, we cover your team every day, so make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. If you're on Apple, please leave a nice review. It means a lot right now, especially people getting back into hockey. Got to help the old Apple algorithm to know that Locked On Sharks is a good podcast to listen to. So spread the word, tell your friends, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what to do with you, man. You just hit subscribe, hit like, all the fun stuff. Because if you want to help me out the best, YouTube is the best way to help out your old pal JD. And then you can, of course, follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at MyFryhole. Until tomorrow or Monday, whatever. Bye, friends.